Waiting, I'm ready.
Welcome, you guys, to another emergency podcast.
And it
I'm
is an
excited.
emergency. And
I'm
it
excited
is
to cover this emergency with you guys, and hopefully, maybe we can solve it. Maybe we can put the emergency out. Like a fire. We're
we
like
can put it out.
firefighters.
We put it out like a fire. We debated, you guys, what was the bigger emergency. Of course, we have our topic at hand, which we're going live about currently. And we also had the topic of Glenn's mom coming into the office to get her Medicare needs met in a few hours here.
That's an emergency in and of itself. It's funny because last night we were talking, you guys, and it came up what type of policy, and Christian posted that in the group. And at first it was kind of like a funny thing, like, oh, haha, like MA plan or med sub. And then I'm like, well, I don't know. And then
I don't think
Christian's
that's a
like,
good idea, Christian.
Christian's like, well, she's gonna get
she's gonna walk out.
She's getting an MA plan. I'm like, no, actually, she's not. So don't you dare write her an MA plan. So time will tell, and maybe we do an emergency podcast follow up on what happened today at your office. I don't know. We'll have to kind of cross that bridge when we come to it.
I definitely think that's a very good idea and I in fear of losing the audience who tuned in and think we clickbaited them to talk about Glenn's mom. Let's talk about the topic at hand. What's the emergency today? What do people need to be made aware of?
And I will say, I wanted to talk about this too from the FCC perspective, which we've talked about. If you guys were on our merger announcement live stream, we talked a lot about the new FCC rules and how that could potentially affect. You look at the comments.
Yes,
it's gonna just all be Glenn's mom from here out. That's fine. We were talking about the FCC rules and how that could affect the marketing of Medicare. And again, my understanding was, when it came to the marketing rules changing for Medicare, that really the FCC was almost stepping in to handle that. So I honestly, if you had asked me a month or two ago, I would have told you we're probably not going to see a lot more surrounding some of what we'd seen previously from CMS talking about these big Medicare marketing rule changes, like no third-party marketing at all, etc. I didn't anticipate to really see much. Maybe I was being naive. Maybe I just was out of the loop from what I was told and from what I had read and kind of learned about. I was under the impression the FCC was kind of taking over as far as jurisdiction and making rule changes. So then all of a sudden we see letters went out to many major call centers, potentially some IMO, FMOs, and these letters, and you can find them. Maybe we'll get some of the text or something. Yeah, it's public knowledge. It's out there. If you search, you can find some of these letters that just went out. And it's from the Senate Finance Committee. Yeah. So, directly from a U.S. senator to these large Medicare entities. And the question was really all about, it was a list of questions, if you read it, like a dozen plus questions asking very pointedly about Medicare marketing practices and how are you getting your clients and et cetera, et cetera. So again, from my perspective, surprised to see this. What was your initial reaction, Christian, when you saw these letters went out from the U.S. Senate?
Shock, to be honest. And I don't know why I was necessarily shocked, but I was kind of shocked. I was just pulling it up right now. So it's actually dated January 11th, 2024, but I think they just started hitting the various organizations that got them in the last couple of days. And, these letters are, when I sent it to you, I remember the wording that you used was like, this is very specific.
Yeah.
And,
do you want to read some of the questions?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So let's see, who do I want to pick on?
Being asked to dab, I just threw it. I'll give you one more. I'm assuming that's Matthew Murray.
Absolutely.
I just triple dabbed.
Let's pick on Go Health. Go Health is a lovely punching bag, I think, for this. So there's multiple organizations, you guys, that had these letters go out, right? So it's a multitude of different organizations. All the big call centers got them. So Go Health in particular um, goes out to the CEO of Go Health. And this is essentially, I'll read you guys a little bit of it. I'm writing to request information about your company's business practices related to lead generation marketing and enrollment in Medicare Advantage health plans. Medicare beneficiaries' health and financial future depends in large part to their ability to find a plan or set of plan choices that best suits their health needs. However, in 2022, a 2022 Senate Finance Committee majority staff investigation found widespread evidence of unfair tactics like fraudulent mailers, misleading TV advertisements. Thanks, Joe. And unending
Thanks, Joe.
sales calls, or Jimmy, either any of these people want to
Yeah,
pick on.
there's a
Um,
few.
and unending sales calls, undermining the senior's ability to navigate and trust the Medicare plan marketplace. Earlier this year, the committee heard testimony about how the MA enrollment period is effectively open season on seniors. Seniors are being bombarded by well intentioned brokers and bad actors who use various ploys to sell Medicare plans, such as providing misleading information about plan options and misrepresenting themselves as from the Medicare program. There's obviously quite a bit more, but I mean, you kind of get the temperature
Yeah.
of this letter, right? Um, More or less, the way it ends is there's a list of questions that they want every organization to provide explanation and answers to about how they're doing business, how they're generating leads, and et cetera, et cetera. And they have a certain amount of time to respond. Like they have a due date, if I remember correctly, on when they have to respond. This is not a little thing, in my opinion, you guys. Um, this is a fairly serious thing, and it was interesting to me that like they're interested about like lead generation tactics and things like that, but some of the organizations on there don't generate leads. Some of the, like there were IMOs on there, FMOs on
Well,
there, like
what happens? So this is a great question because this was one of the first questions I had. Right,
yeah,
if an organization gets targeted by this letter and they don't do any internal marketing or lead generation, right? If maybe there's lead vendors that they point them to, maybe there is a downline agent that's doing their own marketing. What happened? Like, how can they possibly answer all of these pointed questions? Is it something where they're going, like, are they going to point to these other entities and their response and say, you need to talk to them? Are they going to just say, we don't do marketing internally here? Like,
yeah,
kind of shrug their shoulders, like, sorry, I don't know how to help you. I think as far as like, we have all these different organizations that are involved in compliance and changing the rules and the laws. So you have,
yeah,
the FCC, CMS. I would imagine the Senate Finance Committee, that sounds like the top dog out of everything that I've heard. Throw things, the FCC was one thing. I was like, wow, okay. Christian, by the way, guys, if you wanted to see the actual letters that went out, Christian did drop a link in the comments on the Facebook stream. So if you're
yes.
on Facebook, in the comments, you can actually find a link to these letters and read them yourself, so you can kind of get an idea of exactly what this is.
I'm
But
I'm
again, this,
also I'm also working on doing it on YouTube as
oh,
well, you guys.
perfect.
So I'm trying to get it everywhere we're streaming, so you guys can look at these if you'd like to. Um, and
But
yeah, I mean,
I guess so. Like, I guess from my perspective, this is the money that funds Medicare, the government body that's essentially signing the checks, right? They're the ones that want to know, like, how are you guys using this money, right? It kind of
right.
echoes the CMS rules in many ways, in my opinion. It sounds very similar to what CMS has been saying. So I don't know. What do you think is going to come from this? Do you think anything specifically is going to come from this? Is this just going to fuel CMS, and CMS is going to kind of take the ball and run with it from here?
It might become of a new trend, right? Like it might become of a new thing that we see from time to time with different organizations. Like, you know, I would say my first reaction when I saw the letter is I don't think that CMS or the Senate Finance Committee has a good understanding about the difference of business models in our industry,
For
right? Because
sure.
like if you have if you have an IMO or an FMO in there, and then in the next page it is uh Go Health call center or a Towers Watson call center, like
Right.
how are those businesses have anything to do with each other? To be honest with you, like what my understanding has been on CMS's and the government's lack of understanding of the Medicare industry is they don't have much understanding. They don't know what an FMO is. They don't understand what
Right.
an FMO does. They haven't for many years. And so to lump an FMO, I guess, in to that, um, to me, I guess it doesn't surprise me, but I think it is relatively unfair necessarily. Like I'd say a lot of those groups on there, I think, have done a lot of things um, that have caused damage in the industry, and I'll just name the ones that I think of. I'll just, I don't care. I'm just gonna do it. Like
I love
Select Quote,
you start
Select
like you're
Quote.
beating around the bush, and then you're like, you know what? I'm gonna just name them all. Here
You
we
know
go.
what?
You
Fuck it.
know what?
So Select Quote, right? Go Health. Um, those two in particular, I think, did so much damage over a few year time span. From deceptive advertising to TV commercials to,
Right.
like I remember one time it was during AEP, I made a video to just kind of show everybody what was happening when you would talk to these organizations. I called into Select Quote, and the person on the other end of the phone was like, "Okay, I'm gonna need your Medicare number." I'm like, "Well, I'm just calling for information. Maybe I'll give that to you if we move forward." They wouldn't speak to me without getting my Medicare number up front, and when I refused, they hung up on me.
Hmm.
And I heard multiple instances of those kind of things from clients
Right.
of ours, things like that, and like just things that is blatantly against what the rules were at the time,
Right.
like so I don't feel any sympathy for those types of organizations, but it's weird to me some of these other names that are being looped in, and
Well, I think part of the confusion is like an FMO could also be a call center, but an
sure.
FMO is
Yeah.
not always a call center. Like there's all these overlaps that can happen between these different entities and how they operate. And the marketing's the same way. An FMO might do marketing, they might not. An FMO might have a third party lead generator that they work with, they might not. So
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is even if they can define some of these different entities and how they work, everyone kind of does things a little bit differently. And how do you draw these lines where it's like, okay, you're the person or the entity type that we want to change the rules for, and you're fine, we don't want to change the rule. And it never
Right.
goes down like that, right? It's always messy where they're going to try to do some type of sweeping rule change where they think they're getting rid of the bad actors. I think the one part that's maybe a good thing, I guess, is that they mentioned bad actors and not just industry wide. Because again, everyone always talks about, oh, it's these bad call centers, these bad call centers. You know that, yeah, but again, it's still we're all lumped in, right? We're
Yeah.
all in the industry. We're all doing the marketing. All the call centers. Not everyone is a bad actor, and they're basically saying, we hear you. We know not all of you, even the well-intentioned people. You know, we know you guys are all trying to do this legitimately. How do we change the rules to get rid of the bad actors? And I don't know. I don't know how they can really draw a clean line. I think the FCC thing, if it moves forward as it is, that's probably a really strong way forward. I mean, this kind of makes me think the third party marketing rule might be back on the table. That was kind of my thought is initially I'm thinking you guys, the FCC, by doing the one-to-one consent, third party marketing should be good to go, because if it's one-to-one consent, everyone should be happy, from compliance to the consumer. And if the business is happy, everyone wins. But are they going to take it a step further and say one-to-one consent FCC for everyone nationwide, but for Medicare, specifically MA PDP, you can't do any third-party marketing anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm curious if that's back on the table.
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of think about. I mean, it certainly could be. I mean, what did CMS say in the previous final rule from last year at the end? We reserve right to revisit it later, meaning they
Yep.
wanted us to know just because we're not doing it now doesn't mean it won't come. It might not come back later, you
100%.
know? Um, so it's certainly possible for sure. And it might be a telling sign of things to come. It's, it's kind of crazy. Like one thing I'll kind of go into with you guys, just quickly. I don't want this to be just me reading, um, but I wanted to go
Welcome to
into
Christian. Get a chair, cozy up. Christian's read
it's
aloud
story
is
time.
started.
Story
It's
time.
read aloud story time. Notice he has his phone sideways, you guys. That's how old he is. He
I
is
can't see
zooming in. He's like trying to make it as big as he can.
my.
Come on, Grandpa.
I probably need glasses to be honest with you guys. I do have some excellent vision insurance with our friends at Emeritus. Nobody else get mad at me, if it, but
Any carrier reps watching right now?
so, but no, like there is about, I want to say 12 things or so that they're asking for information on all of these. And it's the same letter on all of them. They're just sent to a bunch of different organizations. So the first one says, provide a list of states where your company conducts business and any state or federal agencies that your company is registered with to conduct business. The second one was provide a list of third-party marketing organizations and lead generators from which you purchase leads from 2018 to 2022.
I don't think I realized it went that far back.
Yeah,
2018. Wow.
2018. I don't remember everybody I bought leads from in 2018. I
There
bought
was a
leads from
lot.
everybody, guys, at some point in time.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
That's
Please
crazy.
provide the contracts for the 5 largest, as measured by dollar value per year, third-party marketing organizations or lead vendors for each year between 2018 and 2022. So let me say that again. Please provide the contracts for the 5 largest, as measured by dollar value per year, TPMOs or lead generators for that time period. That to me, I'm like, wow, that's so
Yeah.
specific. The third one, what is the distribution of your agent pool between captive and 1099 agents? What is the distribution of your agent pool between seasonal and FTE agents, which captive is what they mean?
Right.
As part of your offering, do you directly distribute leads to agents? Is there a distinction between your approach to distributing leads between captive and 1099? We might get one of these letters one of these days. You know what I mean?
Whoa,
Like,
don't speak that into existence. I don't want to be on the US Senate's list by any means. No, thank you.
For each year between 2018 and 2022, how many individuals did your company enroll into a Medicare Advantage plan? What is the rapid disenrollment rate? That is when a person it defines rapid disenrollment, as if any of these organizations don't know what rapid disenrollment
Right.
means. It has to explain. Let's see. Do individuals such as your agents provide services that support enrollment and member onboarding? And then it goes deep, guys. Like,
The link again, the link's in the comments, you guys. If you want to go through and read every word of it, you're welcome to. I think another thing that came to mind for me, you guys, from a regulation standpoint that's changing this year, many of you are already aware. Any LLC or company that you have 25% or more ownership in, you now have to register with the I'm going to mispronounce this, but it's the FINCEN network. It's like the financial crimes something network. Like there's a big long name for it. But again, this is one of those things where it feels like they're stepping up the regulations because they are trying to go after the bad actors. And it seems like this isn't just a Medicare related. I think it is more broad than just Medicare, but I think because we're in such a highly regulated government funded sector, I think we're going to see potentially more regulations come down on our side of the business than potentially any other, verticals or niches out there. So I don't know. It seems like a fact finding mission for sure.
yeah,
This is the
yeah,
main thing. It seems like they're trying to understand how this all works.
The other thing too is like if you look at the names, you guys, that they're mentioning on here, these are some of the biggest organizations in our industry. eHealth is on there. eHealth is a publicly traded company. I mentioned Select Quote, Go Health, Towers Watson. There's a bunch of organizations on there, and they're the biggest names that the industry has in general. So I think they're really kind of starting at the top, and who knows, maybe this becomes more of a normal thing and it kind of works its way down, and it's almost like they start doing essentially these audits of sorts, on.
It feels like an IRS audit. That was going to be kind of another analogy. It
Yeah.
almost sounds like they're doing just an audit on different entities just to learn, how this all works.
Yeah. And the crazy thing to me is like, I've said this before and I've kind of ranted and raved about this on previous emergency podcasts we've done, but like if they wanted to know how things work in any kind of, reasonable person's mind, they'd be able to call up CMS and CMS could tell them whatever they want to know.
Right.
But the fact that CMS knows probably a hair more than the Senate does, the finance committee, about Medicare and the Medicare industry. I mean, reading that letter and the specifics they got into, they might know more than CMS.
Maybe.
It's like CMS is so unaware of how our industry works and really kind of where the problems lie versus where problems don't lie. Like, and that to me is just so unbelievable to me, that an organization that really is created for the management and care of the Medicare system, it's the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, doesn't know a thing about Medicare. How can that happen? How can that be? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it blows my mind really to kind of think about it. And I mean, I guarantee, you put me head of CMS and I will know more than
Is
about
this
the industry.
a campaign announcement? It sounds like, guys, we might have just got a campaign announcement coming out of Utah.
But
we have
like,
the youngest CMS.
I would know more about the industry than their whole office combined, I'm sure.
Right.
And that shouldn't be. Who am I? Like, I'm an agency owner in Salt Lake City. You know what I mean? Like, that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't be the case. Like, they should be able to go circles around me about knowledge about the industry, but
okay,
they don't know anything about Medicare.
Yeah, 100%. And if you've ever listened or watched any of our content before, we've definitely hammered on that many times. They just don't understand it, and this letter confirms that for sure. Otherwise, they wouldn't have even been asking these types of questions. There's a comment here from a Facebook user. It doesn't say who, but how do we know it's not the carriers trying to get our playbook and only have captive agents? This is a bit of the tinfoil hat theory that I've gone down the road many times. And I'm not saying that it's not true, but like that might be where this leads, but that doesn't mean that it's like a big conspiracy theory that the carriers are trying to manipulate CMS into doing their bidding. I just think that the way the rules are going, it is going to favor the insurance carriers. It is going to favor large LOA shops. I just naturally think that's the direction if these rules get implemented how we think they're going to be implemented. And again, there's a lot that's kind of up in the air. We won't know for months, potentially years, depending on a lot of different. The presidential election could be a really big deal for the Medicare industry this year.
One thing I want to say about that is, like, the reason why I don't think this specific thing is connected to that is, like, you look at a lot of the biggest carriers, they have dramatically either completely gotten rid of their captive force, or they've cut it down significantly in the last year or two. Like, look at
Mutual of Omaha essentially terminated all their captive agents, really.
Right. And like, look at Humana last year, right? Humana did away with a huge amount nationally of captive agents. And why would the carriers be moving in this direction? to me, what it tells me, and I don't have any inside information, but to me, what it tells me is the model doesn't work. The model of a captive agent doesn't work maybe like it used to. Not anymore. I mean, think about it. Like, Glenn, you have experience kind of like, I remember you tell the story about working in an abandoned Mutual of Omaha captive agent office at the beginning of your career,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I just drove. What's funny you mentioned that is I just drove by it maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago when I was on my Chase Bank adventure. The other the
That
other
should
day
be an
was
emergency
that
podcast
should
of its
be
own.
the banking system in America should probably be its own emergency podcast. But I just drove by it, and I'm almost positive that it was completely cleaned out. I didn't see anything that signified that Mutual of Omaha was still in that office.
Yeah, and I think like
100%.
like if you think about it as a captive agent, what is your level of success compared when you're competing against all the same people we compete against, right, as an independent agent, but you're also competing against all the independent agents can offer everything you can offer, but all the other companies too. Like, you're at a drastic disadvantage. And I think the carriers have kind of started to see like it's not a model that particularly is effective, and so they're making cuts across the board. We've seen it. And now could we get to a place where they're trying to build us into a system where it's more self-enrollment directly with the carriers? Certainly. But I think a captive agent force is not the answer for them to be able to do that.
Is technology the answer?
Probably. Someone said AI is in the works.
Yeah,
That's
I'm saying
probably
that.
the answer, right? Like,
So, well, I think so. The captive agent, Tony Merwin always talks about how like a key part of the rules from CMS is that an agent isn't supposed to be biased in what they're offering. So it almost to me feels like a captive agent shouldn't even be allowed in the Medicare space. If you're only representing one carrier and you can only offer what that carrier has, you're not doing the beneficiary the best service that you can as an agent. There's so many different carriers, potentially better premium rates, better policies that could fit that Medicare beneficiary. So the captive model doesn't really make sense to me. I think the main reason a company like Mutual of Omaha ultimately was moving away and or has completely moved away at this point, which I think there's a chance they've completely gone away now from this captive model. I know they were actively trying to shut these offices down for the past decade. I think it's about margin and profit, and I think from the insurance carriers P&L, their profit and loss statement, there's so much expense that was probably going out the door with these captive agents.
yep.
And they look at the broker channel and all they have to do is roll the paper out. There's no expense. It's just like, here you go. Like, this is your commission and this is, what the premium is. Go sell it. I think they just took one look at that and they're like, we can grow the business and be 10 times more profitable going the broker route. So, but that being said, I've also heard from some of these other players like UHC as an example. I've heard rumblings that they are stirring up their own internal sales force, an LOA call center or an LOA team. So I'm kind of getting mixed signals, I feel like, from some of these carriers as far as their direction on having an LOA, internal sales force. I don't know. I
Yeah.
guess we'll kind of have to see how these rules play out. Maybe they don't really know how the rules are going to play out. And so maybe they're kind of putting a foot in every direction so that way they can be ahead once the rules change. I don't know. It's all speculation.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Yeah, I think there's a lot with this, but to me, I think the biggest thing was why you might be asking this, you might be wondering like, okay, there's big call centers, IMOs, things like that. What does this have to do with me? Well, everything starts at the top, right? could this potentially be something that becomes more of a normal thing? Maybe they pass along a playbook of this to the carriers and tell the carriers, we are putting you in charge of collecting this information from every agent that is contracted with you, or you terminate their contracts and report it back to us, kind of thing. Like, this is the start of something. And the way it impacts you, I think anything that happens in the industry like this, I think eventually could impact any one of us. And so I think it's just, we really have to pay close attention to what's going on. We're in a very interesting time. The regulation has absolutely exploded in the past year, but probably 2 or 3 years with all, but like really the past year, it's gone really, really bonkers. I mean, Glenn mentioned
Do
it
you?
earlier, presidential
Yeah,
election,
that's it.
right?
That was
Yeah.
my question I was going to ask you. I was literally cutting in to say, because you didn't
Yeah.
and you didn't touch it, but I was literally cutting in to say exactly that. Great minds think alike. I was going to say,
Yes.
how big of a deal is the election this year? Is it a huge deal?
The election is enormous because from the FCC, I'm not quite so sure, but I would imagine,
I
I
think
don't
it's
have,
all. I think the FCC is the same as CMS. I think it's appointed by the cabinet or appointed by the president. I'll double check. I'll look it up right now. But
yeah.
yeah,
If that
keep
is the
going.
case, let's just assume that is the case. We're seeing an explosion of regulation because we have a super, super pro regulation White House right now. Like, that is what we have. So the election comes.
Appointed by the President of the United States and
There it is.
confirmed by the Senate for 5-year terms. That's the FCC.
There you
So
go.
literally the president, and it's funny because my opinion, you guys, I've almost always been of the opinion that, like, you know, the presidential election doesn't really matter, and the rules are going to come from different bodies of regulation. But in this situation, the presidential election is very important because the
Yes.
president is the one that is appointing CMS,
Mm-hmm.
FCC, like all of these rules. It's coming straight, and they're not elected. We can't do anything about it.
Right.
We
Like,
can't vote on who's in the FCC leadership roles.
no, but we can vote for who the president is.
We
Like,
can.
which, I mean, let's say that, we play out this year. It's an election year. Election happens. I'm not gonna piss off half of everybody watching, but I have my thoughts, I promise, but I'm
Well,
not gonna go
half
through them.
of
But
that you can say without a doubt, half of everybody that's watching will be pissed. It doesn't
here's
matter
the
who wins.
here's what I will say though. If you don't like these regulations and you just feel strangled by them, you should want a different president. I don't think that's
I
controversial.
think that's objective. I
I
think
think that's
that's
objective.
factual. I think
So,
the current presidential policy has been more regulation, like you said.
yes. I mean, I think that, so we see I'm reading the comment.
Yeah, I know.
You
I
guys
was
make
like,
me laugh. You guys distract me.
triggered
Um
election
but
talk.
like, let's say this year comes and goes, right? We have a presidential race, someone else goes into office. This could very quickly just pull back depending on who goes in.
Well,
They pull
again,
out.
it's a 5-year term. It's a 5-year
Okay.
term when these people, but
But the
if there
CMS
were
commissioner.
people appointed, yeah, if there were people appointed early on, 4 or 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, the leadership's going to change in the next couple of years. So it
Yeah.
does make a difference. It might not be an overnight difference, maybe, but it will make a difference for sure.
Some of you guys, I'm sure watched my CMS video a week or two ago. And one thing I mentioned in there is I went through the timeline of our current commissioner. I went on the timeline that she goes in 2021. Within less than a year, we have a first new final rule. And then that's when this yearly final rule begins, right? And she was appointed by the Biden administration. So what you have with that is, on the CMS side anyway, it could dramatically change things depending on who wins this upcoming election. And, like, do I think these rules and regulations are good for our industry? No. Do I think we needed some kind of rules? I wasn't against some kind of rules. I
Right.
do think there were some things that were out of control, but it's almost like, let's say Glenn and I are on the playground and we're kids, and there's a little kid, there's little Billy, and I go up and I push little Billy and I give him a wedgie and I'm like, nerd. And the teacher comes out and puts Glenn in detention. It's basically what this is to
It
me.
feels
It's
it
like,
feels like that for
and
sure.
so what do you do there? The best solution is get a different fucking teacher. Like that's going to open her eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think there should be no regulation or no rules, but it should make some logical sense, and it should be guided towards the proper things. And I mean, it shouldn't be radical. I think what we can all agree, what we're seeing right now and what we've seen the last year or two is radical.
I mean, I always go, and I mentioned this before. My head always goes to, from a lobbyist standpoint, who is spending money to try to create these rule changes, or how much? I mean, I would love if there was like an infographic that would show, how much money is being spent by which organizations for and against these types of rule changes,
Mhm.
because it does lead me back to the carrier, LOA situation where, yeah, there are certain entities where these rule changes would be beneficial for sure. But I also don't think it's fair to say that the rules always change based on where the money's being spent by the lobbyists. I think it makes a
Yeah,
big impact for sure. I don't think it's necessarily whoever spends the most always gets the rules the way they want, but it has an impact. I think we'd be
sure.
naive to say that it doesn't. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess part of what I feel like I'm seeing too from this current presidential cycle that we're in is it almost seems like they know the election's coming up. And so it almost feels like they're trying to ramp up the rules and regulations because, again, they don't know if they're going to stay in office.
Right.
So, and I think that's kind of standard. I think most presidents, if they think they might lose, or if if there's an election coming up, etc., I think there's like, we're going to make changes right now, and then the next guy, good luck trying to unwrap these changes.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I mean, I think a lot of it might be, you know, trying to squeeze in as much as possible before the buzzer, basically beat the buzzer kind of thing. Um, so that very well could be kind of what we're seeing with this. Yeah, it's definitely a crazy time we're in, guys. I've seen more crazy regulation, more things coming down the pike than I have ever seen in such a short amount of time in my career. Um, and there's people in the government that are probably making arguments to each other that they're very good and they're going to help a lot of things, and they're making that argument, and it's not a good one.
So I guess to like bring this back, you were talking about how does this affect me as an independent agent? If I were to re-ask that question to you, knowing what you know now today, what changes would you make based on these types of questions that are being brought down from the Senate? when you see the U.S. Senate, essentially like one of the most powerful government bodies in the United States, when you see them asking these specific questions, in your head, like, what are you thinking? Like, well, I should probably do this. Maybe I could do this. You know, maybe I need to go
Yeah.
hire a bunch of LOAs. Like, what? What do you think? What are you thinking?
I think the best thing that agents can be doing right now, is, I think, number one, do good business, right? Do good business. Um, do a great job for your members. Like have a cult like following for your business. Focus on a cult like following for your business that you can point to and be like, look what a great job I've done for my people. I have a huge percentage of people that are happy. I think if more businesses operated with that mentality, we wouldn't be here right now. I think the one thing, friend of ours, friend of the show in the Facebook group had said one time, And I think he said it really well. And so I'll kind of not try to reinvent the wheel, but Medicare Bob said one time that a lot of this is coming because the consumer experience got so bad for a few years.
It's true.
And so now a lot of that has been out of our control. A lot of it are these big publicly traded companies, but I think the argument for survival for us as agents, and I'm not saying that we're in danger of not surviving or anything. I don't really think that, but like if it ever came to that, the argument for us surviving is look at what a great job local independent brokerages, independent models do for their clients. The difference is clear. When you point to a national publicly traded call center like an eHealth or SelectQuote compared to the client base of a independent brokerage, maybe they do business nationally, but you look at a Boomer Benefits. Boomer Benefits does business nationally. They do business the right way. So I think one thing is focusing on doing business the right way. I think focusing on consumer experience, because the more seniors feel like we're valuable, the more there would be an uproar if we went away, right?
100%.
So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is to kind of position yourself. I mean, it depends on where you're at in your career, right? Like if you're new starting out, focus on growing your clientele. Don't focus on recruiting. Don't get into any of that. Focus on building your book and doing it the right way, like we just talked about, but focus on that. Now, if you're bigger, I think an LOA shop is a great way to go. I think an LOA model is a really, really good way to go. And I think it probably will have a little bit more security long term, depending on what we see with the FMO rules. I mean, it doesn't mean I think the FMO model can't work, but I think it's being attacked a lot right now. I don't think the LOA shops, I don't think that, like an LOA shop with 10, 15, 20 LOAs is getting hammered like other organizations are. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, I think, and then also, pay attention to what's going on. Like when there is an opportunity to speak, to make your feelings heard, whether it be a petition or whether it be supporting some kind of cause, maybe it's supporting NABIP. I've kind of gotten attacked.
You said it. Just kidding.
I've been kind of painted as like anti-NABIP, and I'm not. I think it is a little troubling to me that I can't ask simple questions without being demonized about something. Man. I feel like
you're really going to open this back up, aren't you?
No. I think NABIP is good, and I think we should all support NABIP, but I also would like a little accountability. Anyway, and I'm not going into this.
I think, listen, Christian and I are pro change. Like we want to see change. We want it to be a better experience for the beneficiaries, but we also want it to be a better regulation experience for agents. Like there has to be a happy medium in here somewhere. So if we don't see the change, I think it's natural to question those who are trying to make the changes. Like what's going on? Why hasn't this changed? I wanted to kind of give my thoughts about, all these different rule changes, what you could or should be doing right now. And here's NABIP is watching. Someone just said, yeah, we probably might.
I believe it. Actually, I don't think that's a joke. I think that's true.
I've already gotten asked since the end of last year to today. It's come through many different ways, either to me directly personally or through lead heroes, where they're asking, are these leads or the way you're marketing, is it FCC compliant with the new rule changes? No, it's not. But the rule changes don't go into effect till next year, and we still don't know exactly how those rule changes are going to play out. So that being said, make money today.
Agreed.
Keep an eye on what's going on, guys. Keep an eye on what's going on. Make sure that you are knowledgeable. Make sure that you're well-read, you're up to date. And when the rule change happens, we all have to be on the same page, and we all need to make that jump. But I think what some people are getting caught up in right now is they are trying to make that jump today. They are trying to move to a completely different business model, or they're trying to change the compliance based on future compliance. And I completely disagree with that. I am going to operate on how the rules are written for today,
Mm-hmm.
and based on my understanding of all the rule changes from all these different government bodies, I don't think we have to worry about any actual changes till probably September 1st.
Mm-hmm.
If we get like a final rule for, next AEP somewhere between, end of August, start of October, that's when potentially we might have to all be looking at some serious rule changes. But until that happens, make money today, operate based on the rules on how they're written today, work shared leads, work leads that don't have one-to-one consent, but you do have consent because that is compliant based on the rules today, and make as much money as you possibly can going into these potential future rule changes. There's so much speculation. There's so much, he said, she said. We don't know how these rules are going to be interpreted just because they get passed, etc. So that's the whole point of Christian and I going live today and sharing what we've learned and what we know with you guys, because we want everyone to be in the know as much as possible. So that way we can all be on the same page in the future. But, as far
Yeah.
as what's allowed today, do what's allowed today. Don't worry about changing everything you're doing right now. I think that's where some of you are completely making a wrong turn.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think that was very well said. And yeah, guys, like, I mean, yes, be aware of what's going on, pay attention to what's going on, but yeah, strike now, make money now
Yes,
while you can. I think that's great
100%.
advice. I think that's great
Yeah.
advice. Um, I want to be respectful of your time. I think we could probably talk about this another hour. But is there any final thoughts you have about this topic? And then maybe that was the final thoughts. I don't
That
know.
was real. That really was
Hard
my
to
final
top.
thoughts.
That's hard to
Yeah, I
top.
mean that's because again, like I'm more invested in this than anybody when it comes to marketing rule changes, whether that's coming from the Senate, the FCC, CMS. I don't care who's putting out rule changes. I'm paying attention. I want to know what's going on. I want to understand how my business can compliantly operate underneath these new rule changes. So I'm more invested than anybody as far as how important these rules are. But again, at the same time, I need to make money and make a profit as a business owner. Like that has to happen. And that's going to come first today based on the rules that are in effect today. So I guess and again, Christian and I have talked about this at great length many times. There are so many of you who get so like wrapped up in the rules and the compliance. It's like it becomes this hurdle that keeps you from selling. It keeps you from making money. That's not the point of the rules were never put into place to keep you from selling insurance policies. That was never the point of the
Yep.
rules. If you think that is the point of the rules, you're probably in the wrong business. You probably shouldn't be selling insurance if you think the rules are strictly prohibitive. The rules are, again, it's a safety mechanism for either yourself or the beneficiary, the consumer, and you just have to learn how to operate within the rules. It really is that simple. But that's my final thoughts, you guys. Christian, final thoughts on today's emergency podcast with the U.S.
Yes.
Senate cracking down. What do you think?
Well, first off, I agree with everything you said. I think that's very well said. I mean, reality, guys, to kind of piggyback a little bit on what Glenn said, these streams about compliance and government regulation should not be our most viewed streams, but they are. So that should tell you guys something that you guys are focusing way out of whack.
Yeah.
I could do a stream tomorrow and be like, here's the blueprint for how
Yeah.
CBIS made $1 million in revenue,
Yeah.
and you guys
Nobody
wouldn't
would watch
care
it.
as much
Nobody's
as
watching
this.
it.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
your focus needs to be eye on the prize, definitely, I think. I couldn't agree
100%.
more. Yeah, guys, my final thoughts would be make sure that a bunch of people just got off as I said that.
They're like, oh, see ya.
Uh-oh.
That's
But I think, as Glenn said, I'll reiterate, definitely focus on doing business the way it's a compliant to today, and don't worry too much about what it's going to be next year. Of course, be thinking about how you're going to make shifts and things like that, but you don't have to just completely close your doors today based on what's going to
Right.
happen a year from now. Like that's crazy talk, right? No business operates that way, by the way. Carriers operate how they are, how they're allowed to all the way until the day that you're not allowed to, you know, all big companies do. And so,
Correct.
I think in terms of everything going on, just, pay attention. Anytime, something kind of gets across our radar, we'll be doing, we'll be doing some kind of communication with you guys about it.
For
So,
sure.
we'll see what happens in the next 9 months. I mean, that's my final thoughts. We'll see what happens, but just
Stay tuned.
grow your business, grow your business,
Sell more policies.
sell more policies, grow your business. All right, guys. Well, we'll have to do a part 2 about how the appointment goes with Glenn's mom.
To really get to the final, the
to
true
really
final
get
thoughts.
to what actually matters.
I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, she's coming. I was telling my
Getting
kids this
closer.
morning. I was like, Grandma is going to be with Christian today, and they're like, what?
What? Huh?
They're like, what?
Excuse me, my grandma.
We do have a final question here. I'd like to mention. It's coming from YouTube. What is the name of the Facebook group I'd like to join? 7-figure Medicare agent.
Yes.
So search on Facebook, 7-figure Medicare agent should come right up. One of the premier, if not the premier, Medicare agent Facebook group to be a part of. So yes, please come join. Tell your friends. The more, the merrier.
Yep. All right, guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week and weekend. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks, guys.